bulimic. I've just got to clear this sign thing. My abstinence date is the 26th of June 2022, and I know I'm abstinent because I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the grey sheets. I write them down and commit them to my sponsor, and I don't eat in between those meals no matter what. Abstinence and God are the most important things in my life today, and I'm really grateful to be here to share my hope, strength and courage with you, and to try to carry the message of Grey Sheet. So I'm going to start at the beginning and just talk about how I found Grey Sheet. I have, well, as long as I can remember, I've been a compulsive eater. I remember when I was a child in infant school, and we used to have school dinners, and I always used to go out for seconds, and I always used to try and get 2 of everything. And it wasn't particularly because I was hungry, it was because I just loved the taste of food, and I just loved the feel of food whilst I was eating food. And I think I was always just trying to eat to change how I felt from a very, very young age. And I was trying to get that dopamine hit. It just made me so happy to eat. I never really correlated food to weight, like physical body weight. Like I never had that correlation until about 11 years old. And I had quite a defining moment in my food recovery, I would say, at that point. And I'll never forget it. It was when I was on holiday with my parents in Florida. And obviously we'd been in America, so I was eating supersize this, supersize that. And I was walking down some stairs and my dad was at the bottom, and he looked up at me and he said, you've put loads of weight on your thighs on this holiday, you know. And I was 11 years old, and I was absolutely mortified and completely devastated, because my dad is the one person in my life that I just want to please, you know, and I want him to have a high opinion of me. And I just remember being completely mortified. And that was the moment where I started to become obsessed with weight loss. And essentially that's where when my bulimia started. So when we went back to the UK, I'd come back from school and my parents would be at work, and I would binge eat and then I would purge. So it was quite a young age. And then I would eat a second dinner with them in the evening. And that went on for a few years until I found alcohol. So I found alcohol when I was about 14, and that carried on for many years. My eating disorder took a back seat, which my parents were glad about. Went through university. I was a very bad binge drinker, but I didn't think anything of it because, you know, everyone drinks to blackout at university, or so I thought. And after university, I went to live in China. So I lived in China for 4 years, straight out of university. And I started to put on loads of weight in China because I never really knew how to eat properly. I didn't know how to do a food shop, and everything was just so complicated in China. So I actually decided to start taking diet pills. So I was taking these really dodgy Chinese diet pills in China, and I did lose lots of weight, but I mean, I wasn't eating at all. And eventually when I moved back to the UK, I couldn't import these diet pills that I'd become so dependent upon into the UK because they were laced with amphetamines and highly illegal. So I found cocaine. So I basically, a long story short, I became addicted to cocaine and later on opioids. And I ended up in recovery for my cocaine addiction. So about 1 year after becoming clean and sober, my eating disorder came back with a vengeance. It literally, one day I didn't have it in recovery, and then the next day it just hit me in the face out of nowhere. And it was absolutely horrific. You know, I was binge eating and purging up to 6 times a day. And I'm the type of addict who halfway through a binge, I'll say, right, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I'll throw all my food away. And I'll promise myself I will never binge eat again and I'll never purge again. And then 2 minutes later, I'm eating it out of the bin. You know, I'm that kind of addict. I will take food out of the bin to eat it during my binging. And it was absolutely terrifying. And that just, I think it just shows like how powerful this disease is and how powerful the physical, the physical allergy that the book talks about is so powerful that no self-will can beat it, really. And it's the mental obsession that I have when I take that first bite. If I take a bite of wheat, starch or sugar, I cannot stop eating. You know, I'm completely powerless over that food. So I realised I had a problem with food again, and it was a complete shock to me. And because I wasn't particularly overweight, wasn't particularly underweight, I just couldn't seem to get any help. I went to OA for a while and I didn't really get it. People didn't particularly seem that happy, in my opinion. And I didn't really get the rules. I didn't get it. No one seemed to be able to explain it to me. It was all over the shop. And basically, I can't make up my own rules. You know, I need to have rules given to me. Otherwise, my self-will will just run riot. So it was actually through my sponsor in my other fellowship actually introduced me to another fellow in GSA. And when I was on my knees, I literally was on my knees and I did not know what to do. So I texted her and she called me immediately and she said, right, what have you got in your fridge? You know, I was crying, I was in a right state. She said, what have you got in your fridge? And she actually helped me to write my breakfast for the next day. And that was my first GSA meal. And I tell you what, after I got off the phone to her, I actually felt peace and calm because I had a plan for the next day. And I managed to sleep that night and I didn't binge or purge again. And then the next morning, she helped me to get a sponsor and I got a sponsor the next day. And yeah, I got straight onto the food plan and it did bring me peace. But I would say basically with GSA, I've been in and out of GSA for about 4 years now. So this was 4 years ago. And when I first came in, I was ready, but I wasn't really ready. I wasn't desperate enough. I still wanted to eat socially. I didn't want to cancel my pub lunches that I had booked with friends. You know, I didn't want to miss out on Christmas dinner with my family, that sort of thing. Like I wasn't really ready to surrender to the program. So eventually I did leave. But what I will say is that, you know, introduction to GSA planted a seed for me. And in the back of my mind,
Ruth, halfway through.
In the back of my mind, I knew that it was there and I knew it was the solution for me. So I went back out and then it was lockdown. It was the first lockdown, towards the end of the first lockdown. And I live on my own and I lost my job and everything. And so obviously my eating got really out of hand again. And I actually had a bit of a spiritual moment and I knew GSA was the answer and I knew that I had to go back into GSA. But I prayed about it. I'm a born again Christian. I prayed about it and I actually heard GSA. I prayed for God to help me with my weight and with my food. And I literally heard GSA instantly. So I went back into GSA and I found a new sponsor. And again, I started the food plan. I managed to lose quite a lot of weight and I got down to my set goal weight quite quickly. And everything was great until I had to go on to maintenance. And because I don't think I was particularly well, I hadn't really worked the steps around it. I was so fearful of putting on weight, and the thought of maintenance for me was enough to bring my self-will back into action. And I decided to take my will back. And, you know, I started tinkering with the food plan and thinking that I knew better than my sponsor. And I stopped doing meetings. I started fiddling around with the weights. And basically, I just convinced myself that I didn't need my sponsor and that I could eat normally. And so I left again. I called up my sponsor and I said, you know what, I think I'm fine. I can go and eat normally now. And then within 3 months, I was on my knees again, on the phone to my sponsor, crying, asking her to take me back. And it does say that this disease is a progressive disease, you know, and it's insidious and it creeps up on us. It's gradual, you know, and for me, it's a 3-month thing. I know that if I stop this food plan, I will be compulsively eating again in 3 months' time and I will be on my knees. So that was my little experimentation I did within GSA, and I'll never do it again. I've done that experimentation, and it says in the big book that you can do that. And I have done that, and I'm absolutely sure I cannot eat normally. So I came back into GSA, and then unfortunately my sponsor left. So I found myself a new sponsor, who is my current sponsor. And it's taken me multiple attempts to get to this 90 days. I'm actually 100 days today, which is a miracle. Because 100 days ago, I could not get a day one. I think most of you might be able to remember me on the meeting, just I couldn't get a day one. It felt like I had 1,000 day ones. Every single day I tried and I just couldn't get it. So working with my new sponsor, it took me a few times to get to this 90 days. And like my last relapse, really, it taught me that, you know, basically I ate an extra piece of protein. And I thought, what harm can that do? That's not going to do anything to me. You know, it's fine. And I was going to lie about it to my sponsor, and I didn't. I grasped myself up. And I tell you what, that one extra mouthful of protein led me to weeks and weeks of binging, purging, you know, and it's because, you know, I need to weigh my protein to exactly 4 ounces because I have a peculiar mental twist of the mind. That's what the big book says. And it, you know, it tries to convince me to take that first bite. So if I eat 0.1 ounce less than 4 ounces or 0.1 ounce more, that gives my disease a foothold to get in and to overtake me. So it would inevitably, if I, you know, change the rules a little bit on this food plan, inevitably I will start to compulsively eat again. And I just find that absolutely terrifying. It's a baffling and cunning disease, but in GSA, I am free of it, you know, and it's brought me so many beautiful moments, GSA. It's taught me how to do a weekly food shop, which I never managed to do before. And I don't waste food. I never, ever waste food. I always eat everything that's in my fridge. Whereas before I used to sporadically shop and then just chuck everything out. I can now cook for myself. I can cook for my partner and others. I can have a functional relationship because of GSA. Before GSA, I could not have a functional relationship because everything revolved around my obsession with food. I wanted to eat alone. I wanted to eat everyone else's food. You know, it just really had a barrier between myself and relationships. What else has it taught me? GSA has helped me to think clearly. So when I'm at work all day, every day, I can actually think clearly and focus on work. I'm not obsessing about food all day, every day. And it's taught me to respect myself and my body and to actually think about my body as a whole and how it functions and just looking after myself, really. And I think I'm blessed. We are blessed to be on here tonight and to have found GreySheet. I think so many people spend their whole lives trying to find the solution, you know, to compulsively eating. And we found it, you know. For me, it really is the holy grail. And I am really grateful. And sometimes I do take this fellowship for granted, but you know, it's changed my life. It really, really has changed my life. And my whole life now revolves around weighing, measuring 3 meals a day. And to be honest, without it, I'm completely lost. During that time when I left GreySheet, I felt so lost because there's just too many options out there. And I really need the anchorage of this program. I do sometimes have thoughts of, oh, you know, I'm 100 days now, I can eat normally. Like I do have those thoughts sometimes because I am an addict, you know, and it is that mental obsession. But I know now that is complete delusion. Whereas before I would probably act on it or consider acting on it. Now I know that is a complete delusion. And I will never be able to eat normally. And I can actually feel my disease sometimes within the food plan.
1 minute, Ruth, 1 minute.
Thank you. You know, I go for days eating the same thing over and over again. I eat with spatulas to get every single morsel out. I just love my food so much. And, you know, I can feel my disease in shopping. Like now that I've got the compulsive eating under control, I then spend a lot of money because addiction jumps, you know. So I just know I just can't, there's no room for complacency here, and I need to work the steps. And for me, I need to make sure that I have to do a step 10 all the time, because I know that resentment will lead to eating for me. And it's hard work, but I do actually have, you know, a life beyond my wildest dreams today, and it's actually the life I prayed for 2 years ago. And it's so easy to forget that, you know, my life is great now because of GSA. And there are days when I wake up and I just think, oh, do you know what, I don't want to have to plan my meals for tomorrow if I'm going into work, or if I'm working late and I'm busy. You know, it's hard, but Grey Sheet is definitely worth it, and I wouldn't change it for anything. And I'm really, really grateful that I found all of you finally after 27 years of compulsive eating. So I'm just going to leave it there.